All right, here we go again. I'd like to welcome a guy that has done it all within the football realm, a guy by the name of Andrew Brandt. So, Andrew, welcome to the HawkCast.
Well, this is great, AJ. Someone I've known for a long time, and remember when you just first came in the league, and here we are talking on a podcast. I think 8 years later. That's cool.
It's
On a
amazing. It
HawkCast,
really,
not a podcast, HawkCast.
the HawkCast. Yeah, sorry about that. I as I explained to Andrew right before I hit record, I gave him a warning of what the podcast is called and said how weird I feel even saying it. And I went back and forth with different names, and I was like, well, I got to have a name for it. So I said, why not the HawkCast?
Yeah, cool. I like it.
But Andrew, for anybody that doesn't know, which the thing about you now, Andrew, is you're a TV star. You're an ESPN business insider, all kind of networks, whatever. So I'm sure what people that see you, maybe if they don't know of your name, they don't know of you, a lot of people have seen you on TV, on ESPN. So can you kind of, before we get into how you started back in the day, you tell us what you're doing now for ESPN and for Wharton and for everything?
Yeah, I mean, since leaving the Packers, what I decided to do was try to take a different turn after years, which we'll talk about, being an agent, working with a team, sort of now a different kind of life. And I guess the best way to describe it is kind of, AJ, a life on my terms more. Not that being an agent or being a team is such a drudgery life. It's not a grudging life where you have no fun, but I just wanted something a little more on my terms where I could control the schedule and primarily be around for two boys that I have that are kind of in key ages growing up in junior high school, now in high school. They were younger, obviously, then. But so I've tried to create this niche, I guess. And this niche is, in simplest terms, kind of broadcasting, writing, teaching about deeper issues in sports. And deeper can mean business, it can mean law, it can mean policy, it can mean thought, it can mean something where you just aren't talking about the games. You're not talking about who's the best player, what coach is going to be fired, what player stinks, what player's really good. I just try to take people deeper. And I take them deeper, like you said, in class, on TV, in my writing. So that's where I've really gone with this. It really started with the writing, where me and an agent named Jack Becta and a guy who's now with the Patriots, was GM of the Browns, was with the Raiders, named Mike Lombardi. We put together a website right after I left the Packers, and that website was all about taking readers inside what really happens from an agent point of view, from a team point of view, from a player point of view with Matt Bowen. And we got that going for a few years. Then Michael left for NFL Network, and then I left for ESPN to write there and also be on TV there, taking viewers inside these lockouts and then anything involving contracts or anything involving players and team relations. And then it just led to another writing diversion of mine where Peter King started a new website with Sports Illustrated and asked me to write for that as well. So it's called the MMQB. I write a weekly column about the business of football. So between writing, again, between ESPN, which depending on the week, I could be on 4 times or I could not be on for a few weeks, just depending what's happened. That's what I've tried to create in my sort of new life, but now it's been 4 or 5 years.
And so, yeah, I know, like you said, depending on the week, how many times you can pop up on ESPN. So right now, I mean, I don't know when we're going to post this, but right now they're going through owners' meetings in the league, and I see your stuff on you definitely keep me updated on what's going on around the league through Twitter. I follow you, and through our lockout in 2011, I guess it was, I just followed you to see what was happening and if they were about to strike a deal, because myself as a player, I wasn't involved in the day-to-day negotiations. I was barely involved in anything, other than voting for our rep and staying kind of on top of what was happening. But you were kind of the guy to go to, I think. Do you think that was almost like a springboard for you in getting out there and letting people know what was going on into this kind of new venture that you've taken on? Because I also saw you on TV almost daily when the lockout was happening.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was taking advantage of an opportunity where I was doing the writing and teaching at Wharton, and now I've added Villanova, which I can talk about. But that happened, AJ, it was like all of a sudden, right around the Super Bowl, where you guys, I was down there taking my boys as a fan, not working for the team anymore. You guys are playing the Steelers, in Dallas in Green Bay weather. You remember that?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The worst freeze that Dallas ever had was that weekend. And all of a sudden, this karmic thing was happening where both NFL Network and ESPN were realizing what was ahead on the calendar with lockouts, not only NFL, but NBA, NHL, all these labor issues coming up between teams and players, and who's going to explain this? So I had my opportunity, and both networks were kind of after me to explain everything. And that was a really tough choice, and I chose ESPN over NFL Network because I thought it was a little more platforms that I could explain things, not only SportsCenter, but also the other shows, the NFL shows and Outside the Lines. So it really happened then, like right around the Super Bowl 2011, and it's been, 3.5, almost 4 years now where I've sort of, obviously there are no lockouts this year, but trying to divert readers and viewers and take them really inside what's happening. I think that's my strength, sort of taking viewers behind the curtain, peeling back, seeing what's really behind it. So much stuff you get from the media is kind of, it's a sports writer's perspective. It's a media perspective rather than an insider perspective, and I think that's what people want. But to your point about social media, I just sort of, like everyone, AJ, you did it. Like everyone just started a Twitter account thinking, hey, this is pretty cool. And then I just sort of threw out some nuggets from my time in the business. And I noticed, wow, people are responding to this. People like this. And then more and more about contracts, about negotiations, about the way the teams operate. I'll tell you one thing that gets tons of interest on the Twitter is, what do practice squad guys mean? People love that stuff. Like, really? Practice squad guys mean? I mean, that seems to be important to people. So it's been a great resource for me to throw out these little nuggets of information, and it resonates. Now, I don't have, millions of followers like an Adam Schefter or someone like that, but for someone in my little niche, it's been a great tool, really great.
I think you hit on that. Until I just asked you that, I honestly didn't even think about that. We were playing in the Super Bowl that year, and we all knew there was a lockout coming. And for people that don't know, the players didn't strike. There's a big difference between a strike and a lockout. The owners, all these billionaires, locked the doors and said, no, you guys aren't coming back until we work out a new deal. And eventually they got a new deal to happen. But I mean, however many months that was, we got locked out in March and we didn't sign until the end of July. So all that time, I think people were leaning on people like you, and there wasn't that many guys that had a perspective that you do of being on basically every side of it. You were an agent. You worked in the front office for the Packers for, 10, 11 years, was it?
9 years. 9 years.
9 years. I know you were the GM of an NFL Europe team or World League they called it at the time.
Barcelona Dragons.
Yeah. So I mean, you've kind of done it all. So you were the kind of guy, one of the very few guys, I guess, that would be able to explain it to us people. And I'm a fan just like anybody else of the league. I don't pretend to understand what's happening with all the lawyers and everything. And I know that's your go-to Twitter line. There will be lawyers. I see that all the time with you, and it's
exactly.
funny for me because.
I've been throwing it around.
Yeah, it's good. I like it because it's very true, and that was the thing with the negotiations between the players and the owners. Is there any way you could even ballpark how much was spent on lawyers for both sides?
Well, it's interesting because I just remember that week so vividly in the 1st of March, coming off the Packers Super Bowl win, and then you just, like you just said, you just sort of get that euphoria, and of course I'm still a fan, having worked there 9 years, and then this sort of darkness. It's the best way I can describe it. This darkness kind of seeped in February. I mean, it was obviously good for me personally because I had this unique perspective you talked about, but you felt like, oh my God, this is not going to go well. And I've tried to detail beyond the lawyers a real lack of trust, a real lack of personal relationship between the two principals, DeMaurice Smith on the player's side and Roger Goodell on the owner's side. Beyond everything that I talked about with lawyers and lawsuits and litigation and this motion and this hearing and lockouts, that was the key to all this. I think that DeMaurice Smith went into this saying, I'm not going to be buddy-buddy with the commissioner, and I want the players to trust me on this. And Roger Goodell was appeasing his owners who wanted to change an economic system that had gone the players' way from their point of view, and they wanted to roll it back. So I know DeMaurice Smith and the players had a tough job. What they're doing, to take an analogy from another sport, they're like hockey goalies. They're just goalies. They were just trying to protect what they had, not trying to get anything new. Now, what they ended up getting new was all this restrictions on practice and safety time and all that, but they had to roll back the money. And the money equation changed. So what most of the lawyer stuff was about was the lockout, because if the lockout was lifted, and that was really all the hearings that went on, and I went to them all. I went to one in Minnesota, one in St. Louis. All it was about was the lawyers for the NFLPA trying to convince the judge that the lockout was illegal. Forget all the other stuff. They just wanted to convince them that the lockout was illegal, because if they got the lockout up, then they'd be back to work, and owners would have to pay them, even though they're all in this litigation and lawyers and can go on for years. You remember that. The whole thing the players needed was lift the lockout. Then who cares if negotiations take 5 years? Because then you're playing. So when the owners won, both in the lower court reversal, there was that weird weekend with the draft, and they were in, they were out.
Oh, yeah.
And then the reversal on the appeals court in St. Louis. I remember standing out there in like 100 degrees in my suit. That was the key, because then DeMaurice Smith, the owners, Jeff Saturday, I talked to all these guys now, I see them at ESPN, they had to realize that, okay, we got no more court dates, and we got this lockout. So here's, and then it came together, as you remember, you can probably say better than anyone, within like a day, you guys were hustled into camp, like, all right, we're done, go in, and then I was on the air more than ever, because now you're dealing with, no one knows the system. You've got hundreds, literally hundreds an hour of contracts being signed.
Yeah.
And that was the craziest 3 days in the history of the NFL business and my personal life, because you had to explain to the world, like, okay, it's done. Here are the new rules. Everyone's signing. Camps are starting. It's on. And that was crazy, as you know.
It was very crazy. And that weekend that you're referencing, the lockout was lifted for, what, a day or so? I remember maybe 2 days?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the lockout was lifted, and I remember getting texts from different players, and they were like, hey, are we supposed to go in? What are we doing? Should I make a plane ticket? Because everyone was back in their off-season place, wherever they're from usually. And I think I might have even gotten a text from my coach saying, all right, Monday – we have, Monday, 6 a.m., weight room open, 7:30, we're run. I think we even got a schedule in that quick. And I remember thinking, like, what is this is so weird. What do I do? And at that time, I remember I would just follow you. I remember you would say, the lockout's going to be back on. Don't be making your flights yet. And that's kind of what I went by was what you said, and I knew that would be the case. And you said the lockout was beneficial to you personally, and for me as well, actually. I had wrist surgery shortly after the Super Bowl. I was in a cast for like 4 months, so the lockout was beautiful for me. I wouldn't have been able to do much in our off-season program, so I was back home rehabbing and lifting the whole time. And then all of a sudden, cast off, everything's all out of my wrist, I'm good to go, and bam, camp started. So it was very beneficial for me. It worked out perfectly. Everything kind of timed up right.
But I did think about guys like you, because not just because I'm talking to you on this HawkCast, but because of personally knowing you. You're a workout warrior, and I would think about guys like you that were, and actually I can ask you, were not only banned during that lockout year from even walking into the facility, but this is something I hear a lot in my present role, which is, what about all these restrictions on the offseason now? I know now you're back with the Packers working out, but from January until, April, how do you feel about being barred from these team facilities, which, again, was the NFLPA's priority? They said, all right, you're not going to give us on the money. We want to get these guys out of there because coaches are overbearing. They got nothing to do. They're going to put these guys out there. They're working them too hard. Get them away from it, and we're mandating like a 3-month vacation. But I'm thinking of a guy like you that just eats and sleeps working out. How has that gone?
Well, the good thing for me is I tell people I could work out anywhere. You could you throw me in a 6x6 room, I'm gonna find a way to get a good workout in. So I don't mind it because it gives me a chance to get home and I can work out anywhere. Honestly, I don't need a crazy weight room, and I have a weight room at my house in Ohio. I have places I can go and work out too. So it's not that big a deal for me. But I think for guys that are not self-motivated or not really need people pushing them at all times, it's a little difficult for sure. But a question I would have for you. So basically what happened is we used to start our off-season workouts like March, let's just say March 15th, around there.
Right. I remember.
Now we start them like April 15th. So we basically got a month more of our off-season for a break or to work out on your own. And my thing was, so the owners get all this money back, and our PA says, okay, well, good, we need some more time then. Give our guys more time. In my eyes, if you could put yourself in in his head, do you think an owner's like, do these guys really think we care about 4 weeks of them working out? We don't have to pay them. We get paid, everyone gets paid the same right now in the off season, 170 a day or something. You know what it is, I'm sure. So do you think the owner's like, okay, great, these guys are schmucks, they great, take your extra month. We don't care. You won't be in our facility eating our food and getting hurt in our off season stuff. So what do you think about that whole situation?
Yeah, I mean, I listen. I'm gonna generalize it, not talk about any specific owner, but yeah, if you have a choice of money or giving them time off,
well, they don't care.
You'd be like, where do I sign? And one of them, I remember kind of thinking like, wait a minute, we can get this deal, and all we got to do is give up time in the off season. They wanted that. Now, I will say this: I think a lot of those financial moves were dictated by the ownership. In terms of the other issue that gets talked about a lot, which is in the news again, always, is commissioner power over conduct. That's all him. I don't think their owners banging on Roger Goodell saying, hey, we need better conduct police and things like that. I think that's him. That's his baby. He really believes in a sense of higher morality and role modeling for players, and that's always been his baby. And talking to him during the negotiations and after, he's not giving it up. He is not going to give up the power over player conduct, and he really takes a personal interest in that. I saw that in Green Bay when we brought in Corin Robinson, and he dinged him for the year. That was like the first guy as his job as commissioner. And then he followed up. We talked a lot about Corin. He went to see Corin. So he takes a personal interest in that. I think that's something that was tough for the players to try to get to, because they went in on that negotiation saying, hey, we're going to limit that commissioner power. No, you're not, because that's something he didn't give up. They did get this. Now, you can tell me from a player standpoint, their goal with these reduced times was to, A, freshen the body, B, allow players to go back to school, which they think is important, between January and April, and C, to hopefully, and I talked to Jeff Saturday about this, add time to players' careers. Like, if you're not banging for 3 months that you otherwise would, or 2 months, it's going to extend a career from a 6-year career, 7-year, 8-year career to a 9-year. I don't know. We don't have the data yet whether it's doing that or not, but that was the theory. Maybe, I'd be interested in your thoughts on that.
I've thought about that. Yeah, I think it also, what depends more on extending guys' careers is the coach that you play for it as well. I mean, there's coaches that are known to extend careers because they take care of their older guys a lot of the times, where they may not be practicing, or throughout the season they may never put pads on and never hit. But I think I've thought about that for sure. And now you're not allowed to have two-a-days during training camp now, and I've been through both parts of it. So when I came in the league, we had two-a-days where we would wear full pads, morning practice, night practice, and each practice might be 2.5, 3 hours long, and you're going at it, and you're blasting each other. At least as a linebacker, I'm hitting every play pretty much. So I think in that sense, yeah, it definitely will help. Hopefully extend some careers. I mean, I'm 30 now, which is crazy. I mean, I was like 21, 22 when I came into your office to sign my first contract, which is nuts to think that we're here now. And I feel great. I feel amazing. I think I've gotten a lot smarter as I've gotten older in how I work out, what I do. And when it comes to the hitting part, what I always try to say they say every Sunday is playing in a football game is like getting in a car wreck every single Sunday. And
Yeah.
what I used to tell people, like, yeah, guess what? I'm getting in car wrecks on Wednesday and Thursday too, buddy. We're still hitting in practice, so I don't mind it. I mean, I'm a physical guy. That's kind of my game. But now that all these concussions are coming out and these head injuries and whatever, they don't know the future, what it holds, this CTE, this protein the brain creates, whatever. I've thought about it. Of course, I have 2 young kids now, whatever. I don't want them wheeling me around the house when I'm 48 years old. But I don't know. You still hit, depending. Like I said, I think it will. The only thing the thing about it is, if you claim that you're want to take care of player safety, that's like your number one issue they've been talking about now. I know the players sued the league, whatever, all this stuff. There's a big settlement. That's another issue. But
Right.
if you claim you're for player safety, you have to take some hitting away, I think. So that had to be some of our leverage, I guess, as a union, is saying you claim you take care of us, you want us to have bright futures and live long lives, then you can't have us killing each other the whole month of August and all throughout the season. So I understand that part. I don't know. Like you said, we'll see in maybe 20, 25 years if it does extend careers. But at the same time, teams are rewarded for signing young guys that make less than we have minimums. A 10-year minimum guy is what, 900 something thousand?
40.
Yeah, 940, and a first-year minimum is now like 375, 400.
420.
Jeez, it's gone up a lot, man. Whew. So yeah, of course, a team, if they're looking and the guys are even somewhat equal, which you have been a part of this a lot, I'm sure. They'd say, hey, you got to let the guy. We're going to save $500,000 a year by signing this guy and letting this guy go. So it's a weird game you guys play.
It's a circle of life with NFL players, and I'm not saying that in a necessarily positive way. It's you come in as a young guy making a limited amount of money, you get to that big contract, which you've gotten to, and then later on in your career, that big contract becomes a millstone around your neck instead of a positive, because now the new guys are coming in making low money. I will say this, having managed a salary cap for 9 years, you need a lot of your roster, and we can define what a lot means. You need a lot of your roster making rookie contracts. And then you need that because they have to balance out the stars. So if you're going to pay, in my day, Brett Favre, now Aaron Rodgers, $20 million a year, if you're going to pay 5 other guys what I call elite contracts, sort of top 5, top 10 at their position, then you got to have 80% of your team on the rookie deals that haven't yet become those star contracts. That's how you balance it out. And it becomes a real struggle sometimes for guys that are making a lot of money but not in that sort of 5-6 superstar category of your team. They become flushed out often because, okay, maybe they're a little better than the guy making $420,000, but not $8 million better, not $4 million better. And that's tough to see. Again, you pointed it out, AJ. I'm a former agent. One of the hardest things in my role at the Packers was I had to, 2 reasons. One, a former agent and seeing guys and knowing what they're going through, how tough a business it was. But also, this was Green Bay. I talked to a lot of players and staff at other teams, and they're like, oh, yeah, management, those are the guys upstairs. We never see them. Green Bay is different. I mean, we were in this fishbowl together. You're from Ohio. I'm from Washington, D.C. We sort of were thrown up there, and we're all in this together. I always wanted the players to not look at me as the enemy. No, I think necessarily that could have been a problem, but I understood it. And I became very close with agents like your agent, Mike McCartney, in terms of understanding, listen, this is not personal. I got Favre. He's making he's one of the highest players in the league. That's why I can't just do what you're asking, or things like that. And you just try to reason it out. And I think one of the reasons they brought me to Green Bay was I was a former agent and had that understanding in dealing with agents.
It had to be a weird thing for you when you first stepped into like the front office role, I think, coming from being an agent, because you're right, you've been on that side where your agents look at themselves like, hey, I'm fighting for my player. This is what I do. I have to do what's right for my player and his family. And then when you were in the front office and you're on the other side, you're thinking, I'm looking out for this team and for my job and my family, and I need to find a way to make all these pieces come together and come and work.
Right.
So that's got to be – was that like a weird transition period for you from going from agent to exec?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take you back to 1999. I know for a lot of people watching, they were like babies then, but I was agent, and I had spent really 2 years working on this one kid, Ricky Williams, and going down to University of Texas. He was going to come out his junior year. We had that all set, and then he decided to stay in Austin another year. So all the big agents are nipping at my heels. I finally get him. He wins the Heisman Trophy, and we have this great thing going. And then all of a sudden I see these guys hanging around, and I'm like, Rick, who are these guys?
I know the story. I'm sorry. That's why I'm laughing, Andrew.
I know. Then I confronted him. And it's ironic. I'm telling you, because you both were 5th picks in the draft. He says, Andrew, I want to work with this guy, Master P. I'm like, who? He said, Master P. I said, who's that? He said, rapper, things like that. I said, okay, what does that mean for me? He goes, well, I want you to work for P. I said, me with P? He said, yeah. I said, I don't know about that, Rick. And anyway, he said, just listen to him. But I listened to him, and exact same time this is happening, exact same time, like within an hour, I get calls from the Green Bay Packers, Ron Wolf, the GM, and he says, I said, Ron, I can't deal with Hasselbeck. That was my one client there, who was a 3rd-string quarterback. Yeah. I'm like, I can't deal with Hasselbeck. I got Master P. I got Ricky Williams. He's like, I'm not calling about Hasselbeck. Why are you calling? Mike Holmgren just went to the Seattle Seahawks. I said, okay. I watched Sports Center. I got it. He said, well, he took Reinfeldt. Mike Reinfeldt ran the business side of the operation. I said, oh, okay. And he said, well, how'd you like to switch sides? And I said, come to Green Bay? He said, yeah, Green Bay. So I divert from San Diego, where Ricky was from, to Green Bay. Imagine the weather. And I just look at him and I say, Ron, let me be very honest and direct, and I don't mean to take offense, but do I have to move here to do this job? And he said, no offense taken, but yeah, you got to be here. Anyway, we decided to do it for reasons I'd talked about in terms of lifestyle, getting tired of chasing these kids around all the country and finding, a different lifestyle and being a little more secure, albeit in a place I didn't even know where it was. I look it up on a map, Green Bay, Wisconsin. And I mentioned Hasselbeck. That was really weird. Coming in as his agent, now I'm his, what do you want to call it, manager. And we were neighbors at Thornberry Creek. We were next-door neighbors. We were best friends, but we were in this now different relationship. And ultimately, 2 years later, he was traded. I'm the one who told him that he was traded to the Seattle Seahawks. So it was kind of a circle of life then. I think the early years were tough for me. Like, wow, I got to hold down salaries instead of getting more salaries for these guys. But ultimately, it became the same thing. I'm negotiating a contract, just doing it from the other side. I think people in their lives that go from prosecutor to defense attorney, go from working for a company versus working for the employees, whatever it is. I think it happens a lot more than we know. You have that skill set, and people want to value you from the other side. So it took an adjustment, as you know, but I tried never to be, like I talked about earlier, I tried never to be the quote-unquote enemy to the players. I wanted them to know I was on their side as well, because like I said, we're all in this fishbowl in Little Green Bay, Wisconsin.
You're right. You mentioned Thornberry, the neighborhood you lived in. I was right down the road from you. That was the funniest thing about it too. Is you're my former neighbor, and multiple players lived in there. So
wrote about that. I wrote about what happens at the draft. What happens when players are picked, and I wrote about your story where you came in, and I may have this not exactly right, AJ, but you not only came in and did the press conference, which every first-round pick does. I think you had a realtor ready. You went out, and in your 4 hours in Green Bay, you didn't buy, but you agreed to buy a house down the street from me.
You're right. I'm a planner, I guess, and I was excited. I was really excited to be in Green Bay, and my wife, fiance at the time.
Yeah.
She, I went in to meet with the coaches and go over the playbook and do all that kind of stuff. Like the day I got drafted on a Saturday, and my wife went out with Sherry, who's still here, and a realtor, and they drove all around, and my wife narrowed it down to like 4 or 5 she thought I would like, because there's no way I was going to go around and look at 25 houses. And bam, we made a decision that day, I think, or Sunday morning before I went back home to Ohio to go back to class on Monday. So we found out, and I've kind of bounced around. We rent up here now, and still in the same neighborhood. So what a funny world it is. I've been in and out of the neighborhood. We've been all over the place here in Green Bay, which means we haven't moved within like 5 miles of either place we've ever been.
I've heard we had that neighborhood with you, me, Mark Rivera at one time before you got there, Hasselbeck, Ryan Longwell.
Kabir.
We had coaches, Kabir, a lot of people in that one little neighborhood. That's Green Bay, not many neighborhoods.
That's right. When you said you didn't want to be viewed as the enemy, that's something that I always struggle with. Seeing guys, no matter what it is, if they're not coaches but more like front office execs, say it's a scout or someone that was in your position or GMs, anything, I see it, and I always ask my buddies on other teams, is there like an unwritten rule or something on teams, not just for the Packers, I'm talking all over since you deal with people in every team now.
Yeah.
Is there like an unwritten rule that don't get too close to the players if you're a front office guy?
Yeah, that's a hard one because I learned that way too. Because I learned about you're gonna have to cut guys, and it's such a short career. I saw players come. I saw like Brett Favre didn't even know the names of some of these linemen in camp that were snapping him the ball and blocking for him. And I think that was partly because he knew a lot of them wouldn't be there a while. So you don't get too close. It was yes and no for me, like I said, because we were a small town, and my wife and I got to be friends with a lot of the players and their wives. That was hard, but I just always tried to make it business, not personal. But now you talk about around the league, you have that vision of the scout or the GM at practice, and what is he doing? He's kind of got his arms folded, he's got sunglasses on, and he's staring out at practice. And what he's really doing is figuring out, I'll let you in on a secret here, what he's figuring out is who's going.
Yeah.
Who of all these players is not going to be here in a week, a month, 6 weeks, whatever it is. That may be the hardest thing. I think people get caught up in the big names. There are a lot of players cut right after the draft because teams said, well, this guy's got no way in God's green earth to make the team now that we drafted this guy or drafted that guy. And what I found really hard, forget about the big names, every year you come into the off-season workouts with 90 guys, and there are guys, as you know, that you're working out with every day right now that are doing everything the team asks. Making every workout, eating the right food, doing all the strength and conditioning workouts, and going to get into whatever plays they get in the preseason games, and they have no chance. They're just not going to make it. And it's a tough thing. It's a brutal sport. The numbers, people think, well, football's got so many more numbers than basketball or baseball, but so many more players trying to get in those numbers.
When you said it was kind of a weird balance and don't get too close because you gotta eventually you gotta cut these guys, and that's the thing that I think I don't view it the exact same way. I feel like I've been around for a while now, going into my 9th year, so I've gotten somewhat close to different guys, like front office scouts, whatever. Not there's always that like barrier between us. Like we know we can talk and hang out and talk about the team and what we're going to do and talk about it, whatever. But there is always that thing. Like I know I'm a player. I know you can say I'm out of here at any moment. But the thing that I try to make guys feel more comfortable and understand. Like, hey man, like I know it's not personal. I know I'm getting cut here eventually. I've been cut from the Packers, so it's like
that's right.
I never take it personal, and I think it's almost like a wasted thing. Like why would I waste possibly learning something from these really smart, cool guys, and why not having some kind of relationship? Because what's the worst thing you can do? You can cut me, great. I'm going to be upset. Believe me, I want to be here, but I'm not going to sit there and be angry at all of them and think that it was personal, or even if I feel like you should still be on the team. It's like it shouldn't make it easier to cut me if you just put your head down and walk past me every day and we never even say hi. So I
Right.
struggle with that weird thing that the whole league kind of has, and every team treats it differently. But I know there's a thing that it's like a separate deal. Like those guys are so separate from us, and they're like they come down as the Grim Reaper. I try to not make it that big a deal.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's hard to. I've only really worked in Green Bay. I've done some work here at the Eagles, but I think it is more congenial in Green Bay than other places. I remember sitting around Reggie's office, Reggie McKenzie, now the GM of the Raiders. Players are walking in and out, coaches are walking in and out. He had that huge area where you could just kind of hang out, and he's such an easygoing guy. Just depends. I mean, I think from my job, what the key, what the word is, I guess, buffer or mouthpiece, it makes it sound a little harsh, but really is the agent. And you and I talked about McCarthy a little bit, or McCartney, your agent. I mean, I think you have to be able to have a relationship with the agent that whatever you want to present to the player, it's presented in a respectful way. Because, you know, there's some agents like, oh, they want to screw you, they want this, they want that. And that's not the case. If you have a relationship with the agent, you can go to them and say, okay, here's what's happening. We've got a young guy, it's coming up, we got something else going on here. Maybe we can work out a contract rearrangement. Maybe we can do something long-term, those kind of things. The agent relationship, I think, is underrated by a lot of people, and that's why it's so important, these kind of people that you don't hear about that are really figuring out what to do with the teams.
That's the thing that the job that you held as, you know, you're the money guy. You're the guy that people came to. So however many guys you had come through your office to sign their contracts, whether it's their first contract or someone re-upping, getting another contract, whatever it may be, it all came through your office. So that position is so powerful because we all know, anybody that knows anything in the world, it's all about money. You got to figure it out. Yeah, of course, there's talent and everything has to go into it, but it all has to fit together. And a job like you had, just the experience that you gained from that has got to be crazy, I think. And like teaching, you're talking about negotiating with Adam Grant, who I just had on here. What is that like, that kind of experience that you gained, because you're dealing with all different kind of agents, all different kind of players, and such a diverse background of players and agents. Has that been, would you say that's like the greatest experience you could have in negotiations, is being an NFL salary cap guy?
Yeah, I think so, because, again, from the agent perspective, you're probably, of your 100% of your time, you're probably negotiating contracts maybe 30%, 25 to 30%. But from a team perspective, you're probably negotiating contracts 65, 70%. And for those who don't understand, the reason why, as an agent, you're mostly recruiting, you're mostly dealing with guys' personal issues, not necessarily bad, but just whatever they got going. I just talked to an agent this morning about something, and I said, what have you been up to? He said, I just spent like hours working on this guy, had a website, wanted me to look at it, wanted me to invest in it, or his brother wanted me to look at it. And they don't even get paid for that. It's just something agents do, all those kind of things. From a team point of view, it was more intellectually challenging than being an agent, because it's kind of like that saying, trying to stick an octopus in a box, there's always something hanging out. So the more you give this guy, the less that goes to this guy. Like at the draft, I wrote about this last week during the draft. I'm like, my role there was not about players. I don't know these guys. Yeah, we had Reggie McKenzie, John Schneider, John Dorsey, Ted Thompson.
All GMs now in the league, all those guys you mentioned on different teams, except for Ted Thompson, obviously, with the Packers.
What the hell am I going to say that makes any player better or worse? But my role was this. I would look at these guys directly. I was friends with them. And I said, okay, a couple different types of questions. Number one, you got this guy up on the board rated as a number one pick. Fine. But does that mean you would take him as our number one pick? Because those are two different questions. If you may rate a guy a number one pick, but that doesn't mean you would take him as our number one pick. Those are tougher questions. And the second question I was always asked is, all right, if we take this guy, who does that push off the roster? Because if we take a guy in the first, second, third, even fourth round, you're pushing someone else off. And I wanted to know if that was going to be an older guy, if that was going to be a younger guy, is that guy we put money into, is that guy we're counting on? if so, we take AJ Hawk 5th pick. That's pushing a linebacker off the roster. Okay, so that's pushing someone off. AJ's here. So what are we going to do? How are we going to deal with that? And should we hold it till training camp? Does he have any chance? Should we just make that cut now? Those kind of things you're always dealing with. Managing a roster, I found it very intellectually challenging because you're trying to sort of work around this bubble. And the one thing about money, you ask about money, is we had a cap. We have a cap now. Cap now is $133 million. If I was managing the Packers now, I would go to the board and I say, "Here, look, we're not going to spend less than the cap. We're not going to spend more than the cap. So I want a budget of $133 million." And that's pretty much the way it went. I wasn't going to say we need $150 million. I wasn't going to say we're going to spend $110 million. I was going to say we'll spend to the cap. That's as fair as we can be to the players. A lot of teams didn't. Some teams went crazy every year, like Cowboys or Raiders, whoever they were. But I think we were on the high end because I thought we just should, if that's the cap, we should spend to the cap. We should pay them that.
And would those guys, so at the draft, would you be there physically? Are you talking about being in the war room, whatever they call it, the actual draft room where all you're sitting?
Yeah, to set it up, Ted would be at the head of the table, flanked by his top personnel assistant, whether it was Schneider or Dorsey or Reggie, and then McCarthy on the other side, and then I was further down the table, being in touch with a lot of agents and asking those questions and being at the ready in case we wanted to make some trades. And then the most famous war room story that I was part of was when the year before you, in '05, when we had 20 players up there rated as number one picks, we get to our pick at 24, and those 19 of them are gone. We got one name, Aaron Rodgers. He's a quarterback. We've got the most durable quarterback in the history of football. Okay, so now we've got sort of murmuring in the room like, wait a minute. This might be happening here. This might be a thing where we're going to take someone that may not help us this year, may not help us next year, may not help us in 3 years, may not ever play for the Green Bay Packers. And that was a decision where it got very tense. Ted told me to get him on the phone, actually get his agent on the phone, which I did. Called a number. I hear this, hello. I said, Mike, his agent named Mike, like your agent. And he says, no, this is Aaron. I felt so bad. I'm like, Aaron, I'm sorry. Can I talk to Mike?
Oh, jeez.
And then I had to keep the both poor guys, on hold for 10 minutes. It was 15 minutes then, while we figure out, while we see if the phone's going to ring and someone's going to offer some deal we've got to, consider. It was the longest 10 minutes of my career. I had to sit there, and those poor guys, you see them on TV, like cameras on, and they're just saying, Andrew, you're going to take him? You're going to take him? I'm like, hold on, just hold on. And then he gave me the go-ahead with like 2 minutes left. I mean, that was long. And sometimes when I watch you guys, I watch Aaron, I'm like thinking, oh my God, what if that phone rang?
Yeah, what if? Yeah.
What if that phone rang?
Yeah. I'm glad it did not. As a member of the Packers, I am glad that phone did not ring, Andrew.
No. And he came in just like you did right after the draft, and everyone loved him, that California cool right away.
Yeah, he's the man. I tell people all the time. He's the greatest player on the planet. And it sounds funny to say. I'm like, well, you tell me someone better. Like, obviously, there's a debate with all kind of, there's, maybe 5 or 6 quarterbacks you can put in there. But I say it, I'm super biased towards him. And yes, he's the greatest player. Whatever, he'll probably watch this at some point, and he'll be so, he gets all weird if he hears me talking about him. Even though all I do is pump him up, he always thinks I'm going to tear him down to the media or make fun of him or make stupid jokes about him. But would they ever come to you when you're in a position like you are on draft day? Say there's a couple different guys they might take at a certain pick. Would they come to you and say, Andrew, can we make this, probably first rounders, I'm guessing, and say, can we make this work? Can we sign him? Do we have the room?
Yeah, I mean, they'd come to me about not so much do we have the room, but like, how about this agent? Because some agents were known as holdout agents, and what I always said was, hey, that's my problem. You do what's best for the football team, I'll deal with the agent. Yeah, I can deal with any of them. If they're going to be holdout or be asses or whatever it is, I just said, like, hey, I can deal with it. That's my job. I got to deal with that. Now, as you know, I mean, these guys are signing. We're taping this like 10 days after the draft. Half the picks have been signed.
I don't think you need an agent anymore. Do you think you do?
Well, it's a great question. I get it all the time. And you know who I get it from? I get it from parents of players looking for agents. I get it on Twitter from college prospects. And it's a very tough answer. I think for the absolute numbers, AJ, you don't. Now, there's ways to negotiate structure, like say you have a big bonus. Maybe an agent can get you more of that money earlier than waiting 3 years to get the payout for all the money. Or, this things, I don't want to get too technical, things like offsets in the contract or roster bonuses or how it's structured in your third and fourth year. Yeah, an agent for that. But the numbers we know. You were the fifth pick, and we took 3 months to do your deal, not because your guy was obstinate or anything, because that's the way it was then. The fifth pick of the draft just signed. Khalil Mack with the Raiders signed like 3 days after the draft. That is unheard of for someone that high, but that's what it is now. You know the numbers the moment they're drafted. Do you need an agent for those numbers? No. Do you need an agent to do more of the structure and guarantees and all that? Yes, but I think there should be a different fee model for that instead of percentages.
What I would do, and I'd heard people have done this in the past, but this could be a whole new avenue for you. I would, honestly, if I was getting drafted right now, this is easy to say 9 years after, I would not get an agent when you're coming out because they're all preset, what you're slotted, what you're going to get basically. The structure, yes, you can work on. And I would hire Andrew Brandt and pay him an hourly fee like a lawyer to negotiate my deal.
I've done some of that.
Yeah. I mean, don't you think that seems like it could be a big market that would pick up? I'm sure my agent's super pissed I said that. But I mean, it's true. Why would you? If you're set, like it's legit set what you're making basically.
Yeah, I mean, I won't tell you the players, but what's happened is people have come to me, agents and I guess brothers, parents, and said, will we look this over? Will you make sure the team's not screwing us? Or in some cases, will you do the deal, but not, I'm not certified as an agent. So do it for the agent, work with him, talk with him, and that's completely allowable. The NFLPA allows agents to consult with whoever they want, and I do my own deals with the agents. It's a nice little thing for me. It allows me to sort of do it in ways that I'm comfortable with. People ask me all the time, and maybe I'm anticipating this question from you, would I want to get back into it? I'm like, no, my life's too good. Yeah. But these things where I can just do this as an aside, where I can jump into these negotiations, is fun for me, yeah.
It would have to be, and people had done that before this whole slotted system too. I know guys had hired, some guys will tell you don't need an agent, it's 3%, you're just throwing down the drain, or 2.5%, whatever you negotiate with them. And I was always thinking, I don't know, man. I was like, have you seen these contracts? Like, my thing is like 30, 45 pages long, whatever. Yeah. It's so many pages. It's ridiculous, the language they put in there. So I think you do. With the old model, I think we did need a guy,
And for veteran,
Exactly. If you're trying to get a second deal, you definitely need a guy because that is not slotted. That's a whole another game.
Yeah, and I think, I've seen so many agents, both experienced, inexperienced, guys that know what they're doing, guys that don't know what they're doing, guys that flame out very fast because they just think it's all fun and games and they realize this is a grind. The guys that have been in it a long time, like Priority Sports, like CAA, like Drew Rosenhaus, Joel Siegel, and they grind. And they're now in their late 40s, 50s years old, these guys, and they're just pushing it all the time. It just becomes a habit for them. But it's a tough business. You talk about me teaching. The number one job that these kids want is agent. More than being with a team, more than being with a broadcasting. I mean, they just want to be agents. I don't know why. I think it's partly Jerry Maguire.
Entourage too, probably. If you watch Entourage.
I mean, they look at it and like, wait a minute, I can have a career hanging around with ball players? That's cool. And I say, listen, number one, if your qualification like, when you go to an interview and say, I love sports, they'll kick you out of their office. No way. Everyone loves sports. That's a given. I'll work for free. Okay, forget it. Everyone works for free. You got to find your special skill. Why should some guy hire you as opposed to all the other schmucks trying to get your job? Why you? That's what people want to know. What makes you different? Like at the Packers, my assistant there, Melanie, she came from Schneider Trucking. She was an analyst. But I thought she was so valuable because she could take all this data about players and put it in forms that I could work with and figure out. We had this cap room at the Packers, still there, I'm assuming, where it had all the charts for every player in the league. Instead of the war room charts of height, weight, speed, 40-time vertical, we had cap number, agent, contract number, salary, proration, bonus. And it was just a way to analyze data. She had no sports experience. So that's what you look for, something that separates you.
That sounds like she would be very valuable. Some way to put all that information together. It's like a company, a cheap plug to my company my dad works for, LexisNexis. I'm sure you've used LexisNexis, right? Take all kind of tons of information and put it in one spot and make it easy to get. That's kind of like what you said. It sounds like Melanie did for you. But if I had to give any advice, which I am not qualified to give advice to anybody, I would say being an agent is not very glamorous. I mean, what do you think? I would say, is your audio working?
You hear me?
Oh, my bad. Sorry. Yeah, you cut out.
Yeah. I'm here.
I would think an agent, in my eyes, that when I think about what an agent does, I mean, 85% of the time is probably recruiting players, always working on who you're going to try to sign, and then having to mooch off of different people. Luckily, Mike, my agent, he's great, and he knows that's not really my thing, is the network for him. So, but I know a lot of guys on my team, they get so upset because their agent will text them and call them all the time, like, hey, I'm going to have this guy call, or can you call this guy, or talk to his parents and let him know, tell him I'm a good guy. And so agents are just always hustling and always have to do that. And if you want to get new players every year, you have to do that. And also, the other thing agents do is they just deal with problems. They're not really like I don't sit there and text and call my agent ever unless I have a problem, unless I have an issue I need fixed or helped with or whatever. So it's like it just doesn't seem like everybody has their own thing they want to do, but I would say check it out first. Maybe intern for a guy. Go be somebody's assistant for 5 or 6 months before you realize that's where you want to jump into head first, I would say.
It's been interesting for me, AJ, is dealing with, now that I'm media and dealing with agents for me. It's been really weird because I'm looking at these guys and I'm like, okay. And then, of course, the question that I guess a lot of young players are asking themselves, I ask myself all the time, do I need one? And I can negotiate with any network executive, whether, whatever TV network but what I needed was contacts. I needed someone, and I guess this is applicable to football too, someone that in football, the GMs, the coaches, the scouts, that gets you access. And I needed someone that knew the people in television or writing or digital or whatever. So it was a very weird experience for me interviewing a couple agents, and here I was, being a client for the first time in my life.
Do you have a broadcasting agent?
I had one guy, and then I realized, now that he had a relationship, or I had created a relationship beyond him, for instance, with ESPN, I just did it myself.
I would say if anyone's qualified to negotiate their own contract, it would be you, Andrew. I think you have that part handled.
Well, the key is, I'm sure you talk about this with Adam Grant. I mean, it's all leverage, and the only way you really have leverage is if you have options. And the best negotiators are the ones that have the most options, where they can basically say to whoever they're negotiating with, yeah, okay, if you want to do this deal, I got someone else who will, or I'll do something else. And the worst negotiations are ones you don't have leverage. I mean, I take this to the Packers, where if there was a player, and I think you were one of these on the rookie deal, where I just couldn't really come back to the general manager and say, "Hey, sorry, he wanted too much." You know, if there was a player like that, that's pressure. If there was a player that where, say, me and Ted or me and Ron Wolf, whoever decided, okay, we're going to go to X, and if he doesn't want X, that's fine, we'll move on. Those were easy negotiations. They're like you negotiate to the point you're comfortable with, and then you move on. But I think about someone like I don't know, Charles Woodson or some of Brett's contracts, where Darren Sharper's deal early in his career, where I knew in my heart I couldn't come back and say, "Oh, sorry, we lost him." That wasn't going to be an answer.
That had to be kind of nerve-wracking for sure. And I like how you said some of Brett's contracts. That guy played for so long, he just keeps getting new ones. And man, that's the thing. I mean, you've been out of Green Bay for a couple years now. It's funny now. Obviously, I'm one of the old guys, but when the young kids come in, and I tell them that I played 2 years with Brett, it's like their brain can't comprehend that. Like, wait, what? Are you sure? And if you see Brett now, his big old white beard and long hair, and he's jacked too. I don't know what he's. I need to. So if somehow Brett gets this. Also, Andrew, you might be the guy. I want to talk to Brett on here. That'd be a good one to talk to. I want to ask him what his workout plan is. Have you seen his arms in those pictures and videos he's posted?
He's got something going with the gray and the beard, but then the body is just like
he's
ripped.
However old he is, just so vascular. I want to get on his arm program. That's for sure. But
you did pretty well yourself. I'll tell the story. Like you mentioned that 45, 50-page contract. I remember getting it done the night before camp or whenever it was, talking to your agent like, okay, we need him in here like 7 a.m. to sign so I can get going. And then he called back or you called back or something. Your biggest concern was, can I get a workout in? Can I get a workout in before I sign? And then you came up all sweaty in your green shirt, I remember, and your long hair, signing this big old contract, all sweaty.
Yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. That's why you gotta have an agent. You could have given me a sheet that said you get paid $0 for 6 straight years, and I was just so young and stupid. I'd have signed it. Luckily, you sit there and you go in the room and you get your agent on the phone, and he goes through each page. And I was, especially, I mean, even now, I was so just over. I was like, all right, we got practice coming in like an hour. I need to get down there. So he's trying to like explain to me, like, all right, yep, all right, cool, whatever. I trust you, So that's why you have to have people you trust. So you're not just a young stupid kid like I was, and still am.
Now I was ahead of the game because I used to have Melanie come in and take pictures of people sign. I think I have your picture. Now it's tweeted everywhere. I mean, now that's the big thing. Everyone tweets their contract signing.
That is, you're right. Yeah. I have seen a few of those. Yeah, I did see we signed Julius Hiscott out there.
That's right.
That is true. Yeah, man. I don't know. You were ahead of the game. You're a trailblazer, just like I told Adam Grant. You guys are just paving the way for the people behind you. But you've been great, man. I'm gonna wrap it up here real quick with you because you've been awesome and very generous with your time. You're a super busy guy. But do you have I would just say, what's your plans for the future? Are you going to write a book? Do you have your own show? What's your ultimate goal, I think, with this broadcasting, teaching, writing? What is it?
This is that word for this generation. I understand it. Maybe people get annoyed with this word, but continue to build the brand. I think I have a brand, and I wanted that brand to be credible, authentic, knowledgeable, full of information that people can't maybe even get elsewhere in terms of credibility on television and taking viewers behind the scenes, credibility in writing and doing that, and in teaching as well. Now, whether that brand leads to books, leads to my own show, whether on radio, TV, podcast, whatever it is, we'll see. I just want to continue to keep developing it to be that guy and hopefully even spawn a generation of guys under me that is teaching people or educating people about the business of sports, the business of football, legal aspects of it, business aspects, societal aspects, kind of be a go-to guy on issues, like I say, inside the game, behind the game, take people deeper than just the game.
That is great, and I can vouch for you as a as a player that I've read a lot of what you write for the Monday Morning Quarterback, the mmqb.com or the whatever it is. What is it exactly? I'm sorry.
That's it. Peter King at the mmqb.com.
I don't know if there was I don't know what it was. I didn't know his whole. You talk about a guy that has created a monster. I mean, in a good way. He has a brand now, and so I think with him bringing you on, that's a huge thing for yourself personally, and to be attached to a guy like that that had to be a nice feeling when you were brought on with him, and really can get your stuff out there, because a lot of people are going to see it, I would imagine.
Yeah, and the thing is that, again, creating this brand where I had to, it's like the Jerry Maguire line, when Peter approaches you to do something, he kind of had me at hello. And then I had to go to ESPN, and I really am very grateful to them, because I had to say, listen, I'm no longer going to write for you guys because of this Peter King, but I'd like to stay on TV. And that's something I've been hopefully able to manage. They've been great about it. Like, okay, we understand, because they're kind of competitors. I understand that. And they've been allowing me to sort of write for Sports Illustrated entity and TV for ESPN. So hopefully I'll continue to do that for a long time.
Did it take you last question, I'm sorry. If you ever see any of these, my previous ones, you'll see an underlying theme of all of them is I just can't seem to let people go. I just keep asking. I'll talk about wrapping it up, and it'll go 15 or 20 more minutes, and I feel terrible. But this one's not. But on a lighter note, how long did it take you to feel comfortable saying you're going to build your brand?
Yeah,
they'll tell you that. That's something that they'll tell you as a player when people come in and speak to the team or whatever. Marketing people, they'll say, "Well, you gotta face it. You guys are a brand. You're a brand, and what you do, everything plays into that. Whether you're a good guy off the field or you get in trouble, whatever you do, and you got to build your brand while you're still playing and all this." And I'm like, "Yeah, I understand what you're saying completely. I really do, man. It sounds great, but man, you feel like a big douche when you say it, don't you? Not you, me. I'm sorry."
No, me too. I mean, it's something you got to get over. It's like bringing this back to kind of where we started. This is the whole people. A lot of people know me. Forget about ESPN or MMQB. They know me about Twitter, and so to bring it back to that, I'm a pretty, personal, laid-back guy, and to be even on Twitter. I mean, we can talk about TV and radio and writing and all that, but even on Twitter, you have to self-promote. And it took some leaps. I mean, I've been on it now 4 years. It took some leaps to really sort of put things out on Twitter, because you're self-promoting. Whether it's pumping your articles, pumping something you're doing, pumping yourself. And I guess like anything in life, once you start doing it, you feel a little more comfortable. Maybe you take a step where you're even promoting yourself a little more than the last time. But like I said about my brand, I always want to be credible. I don't want to jump to conclusions. Sometimes even on TV, people say, well, why don't you just yell out and scream that that's wrong? I'm like, I'm always looking at both sides. Maybe it's because I'm a lawyer. I'm pretty measured. I'm always going to say, well, it could be this, but it also could be this. And maybe this guy is not wrong. Maybe, I'm always going to look at both sides, and that's me, and hopefully that comes across well.
Yeah, you're authentic, I think, and that's something that people can see right through. If you're not, they'll see if you're fake. And like you said, taking some leaps, I think that's a great message to get across, and that's something that I still struggle with daily. And I'm on Twitter, yeah, but I'm not real active because I feel weird, like I'm like, man, I should probably say something, at some point. I should probably do something, and it's like, what do I have to say? Nothing. Like, I don't know. I'm not, it's always a weird thing for me. And I know I've talked to multiple people that say, like, you need to, of course, it's not even self-promotion is just, it's normal. It's what you do, but you got to get out of your comfort zone. That's kind of what I'm doing here. I mean, if I would have, it's not like I'm Barbara Walters over here interviewing people. I don't ever claim to be, I never will be, but I enjoy talking to people and learning from them and being inspired by people like you and Adam and all these different guys I've talked to on here. But I feel more comfortable doing it now, but getting it started and doing it is the toughest part. You know, anything that's really out of your comfort zone. I'm naturally a really quiet, shy dude, and so to do this where I actually run it, I had Joe Buck on here, and I was joking with him about it, how sometimes I'll be talking to a guy and I'll forget that like I'm running it. Like you'll answer your question and you'll answer one of my questions, and I'm just like, cool, yeah, that's awesome, man, yeah. And then I forget that I need to. It's me, you know, it's my thing. So it's the same thing, yeah. Just the more you do something, I think I like your message there that it takes some leaps, but then it gets easier and easier as you go, and you realize like, hey, this is actually cool. It's fun. It's something I'm passionate about. So if there's anything anyone took from this, I think you've given us tons of great messages, but that would be one that I am definitely it's gonna stick with me, and maybe you'll see me being a little more active on different things, social media. I don't know about self-promoting. I don't know if I have a brand. I don't know what it would be, but I'm gonna. You've inspired me, just like everybody on here does.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the message, and also, I'm not as good as this as many people are, but try to get out of your comfort zone. That's really hard. I mean, I even look at it physically. You're a workout warrior. I do running and biking, and I always
triathlons. I know you, Andrew. I know I studied you. I know.
And try to see if I can, hit another time. And comfort zones are really what holds us back, and in all areas of life. And if you push just a little bit, the next time's easier, and then a little more, and the next time's easier. That's kind of a life message way beyond sports or any of this stuff.
I agree completely. But so, thank you very much, and it was great. I think you give a lot of great insight to what goes on behind the scenes on both sides: agent, exec, TV guy, broadcaster, writer. You do it all. So you're a true Renaissance man, I think, and I look forward to seeing everything you have in the future. And you're the guy that's going to keep me updated on what happens in the NFL, even though I'm currently still playing. Luckily, I look to you to let me know what's happening with the owners, 18-game season, all kind of stuff that I didn't have a chance to get into. But thank you very much, Andrew. You were. It's been a weird ride that we came back around 9 years after I walked into your office to sign my first contract with the Packers. I'm back here talking to you. I could have never have imagined this. So I want to thank you again. You were awesome, and I'm going to be checking you out, everything you do. And your Twitter is at AD Brandt, right?
AD Brandt, you got it.
BRANDT. So thanks once again, and we will be talking soon.
Thanks, AJ. It was great, and you and I will be lifelong friends through this stuff.
That's right. Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you for joining in. Please visit thehawkcast.com, where you can discover the next guest, get a little more information about why this exists, watch past episodes, or link over to iTunes. And tell some friends, too, so we can all hear more great stories together.